Azim, I added a few sections on top of project updates on the meeting agenda. Like I just wanted to let you know about that. You'll be like, I added that section. Just want to let you know. And probably we could also add about the scorecards, the dev website and all that. But I just wanted to let you to try that. I don't want to take that away, but I just want to add that.
All right. Yeah, let's get started. So usually we do this by, you know, um, asking anyone who's new here to the meeting. So if there are folks who are joining us for the first time who haven't introduced yourself, please say hi and let us know what it is you're looking for.
Hello, my name is Scott Hissam. I'm with the Software Engineering Institute at Carnegie Mellon. I've been playing around with the scorecard now for a couple weeks, looking for ways to get insight into open source software practices being employed by teams. And I was encouraged to check out the scorecard and want to find out what's been going on, what the plans are, and see about addressing issues over time. Over.
And Scott, welcome.
Hi, David. Nice to see you, sir.
Thank you.
Welcome, Scott. Anybody else wants to go? Cool.
I'm going to repost in the chat the link to our notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, unless they've changed, I just requested access.
You should join. There's a community. There's a Google group. If you join the group, you should be able. If you go to the scorecards at dev, there's a section. Yes, perfect. That's where. If you join that, you should be able to update the data.
All right, I will. Okay, I can almost read that. Okay. You're talking about on the GitHub repo, right? No, that's not.
I pasted it in the Zoom chat link. So that's a Google group. And if you join that, you should get access by default.
We should probably update our calendar to include that so that it helps people.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Like it's just that we don't have, none of us have permission other than people in Linux Foundation.
Well, I might, but I don't. You know what? I'm gonna send that on to. Can you send? Can somebody send that request to Jay? Jay Benson. Sorry.
Can you post that
in
the doc? Yeah. Okay.
I can actually update the calendar invite myself.
Oh, perfect.
Oh, okay, great. Even better.
Yeah,
all right. If you can't, contact Jory. She will help you out.
Okay.
Will do. Cool.
So, Scott, your mere presence has already helped us out, or at least helped out future people.
Wow, I can end my day early then.
Cool. Looks like we have some quick updates. Naveen, do you want to go, or do you want me to listen?
Yeah, but like you should probably do that. Like I just want to call it out some things, so please do that.
All right. So yeah, I mean, this is to the best of my knowledge. I'm just reading it right now. So so the Scorecard and All-Star team, presented a bunch of open source summits. I think there are videos that are uploaded there. I think they're talking about. I mean, what are the different talks here? I think some of these are technical,
so sure, right? Yeah, like just wanted to add to what as you mentioned. We just wanted to highlight some of the talks that we presented at the OSA Summit, so that people who couldn't attend the OSA Summit get an opportunity to go see about what Scorecard and All-Star is and how it is essentially helping the open source community. I just want to call that out so that it gives an opportunity for everybody to do that.
Yeah.
Thanks, Azim.
I think the other update we had is we have a new beta version of Scorecard Action. So what the beta release really does is it allows you to start displaying a scorecard badge on your repository. So it's a way for you to basically say this is the security score of your repository. And the other thing that this action would do for you is it will start publishing your results which are accessible through a REST API. So if you install this action, your scorecard results will be accessible on a per commit basis. So yeah, feel free to try it out. We should have a production version coming soon, but we have quite a few repositories using this already. So we also have a v4.0 release. Do we have anything new in this, Naveen? Or I think this was
one of the critical reasons is Ethan and Lauren wanted is the way in which we can have these jar files not be complained. We added that update. Ethan added that update, so that was one of the primary reasons we released it. I think that there are a bunch of things that people solve. We should probably utilize as an opportunity to, in a weekly, like a bi-weekly, talk about what now things people have interest so that the whole community is aware of what are the new things that are there. So that was my another thought process to start the conversation in our bi-weekly.
Oh, sounds good. I think the other thing this adds is this is probably our first time trying out a Salsa release flow. So I think we're still planning to improve on it, but yeah, with this release is released through a Salsa release workflow. So the artifacts here should be Salsa compliant. All right. So I think with that, if anyone else does not
There is
have
also,
project.
do you want to talk about the scorecards.dev that came out? That
Oh yeah, I think we are still like working on it. So
okay.
Yeah. But yeah, we have a website coming out soon. So hopefully the next time we meet, I should have a better update for you folks.
You think it'll actually be released, or you hopefully have more information next time?
Ideally released if we have some of these domain names and stuff like that worked out.
Okay. Wow, that'd be great.
Cool.
Azim, sorry, I'm gonna ask, is there something that we can start as a team giving the updates in these bi-weekly? So like not everybody is aware of what is happening within the project and then constantly tracking on PR. Could we start that?
I think so. I usually see a lot of open items. So I think this was one of the debates we had long back too. Like the open items are so many that we are unable to get to member updates. I don't know. I'm okay with going through the open items and then like kind of going back and seeing if there are any like per person updates. If that works for folks.
Works for me.
Yeah, I think having a roll up, even if we can run reports on like the most recent closed PRs and kind of bubble up themes that way, right? We do that bi-weekly.
Sounds good. Cool. So we have a few opens. Should we quickly start going through them? Naveen, did you want to make an update on the scorecard API results?
Yeah. So I think if you don't mind, can you click on that link?
Sure. Sorry, I'll have to change what I'm sharing.
Yeah. So we recently did the API results available for it's part of beta that we are working on. One of the things that we could essentially also provide us get the release information part of the API So essentially, people utilizing the API should be able to say, hey, if I'm, example, depending on Kubernetes, can I get scorecard results for, say, like 18.4 or any of those particular release, because it makes people saying, okay, I'm using this particular version of scorecard, oh, this version of dependency. I want to know it's the health of that repository at that moment of time, because it gives me warm and fuzzy feel instead of me going on tip, because obviously I'm not going to be on tip every moment. That is my thought process in opening this request, so that I wanted to get people's thoughts, and that's the reason. I'm going to pause right now and let others talk about it.
Huh. I'm okay in principle with caching things for performance, but I do worry that some of these things, some values are not just based on hashes, like branch protection. I mean, you may be off, it then may turn on, or best practices badge. Maybe it wasn't there before, it is now, and yet, so I mean, there's I worry if it's cached forever, you're going to eventually get old data. On the other hand, I understand you don't want to beat up systems, so rerunning every 2 seconds is ridiculous. So, how long do we expect these to stay cached before the scan gets rerun?
It's a weekly scan, so we do have weekly scans to do that. So essentially, it gives the people an opportunity to say, hey, I want to have the latest, but I also want to go back in time, and because I gives people an opportunity to say, hey, I want probably these checks on this release, so that it gives me essentially seeing a consumer to know what it is on that point of time on the release.
Oh,
right
okay.
Now,
So I misunderstood you. So this doesn't eliminate the occasional rerunning.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
We just
I was
sorry,
afraid this was going to stay forever.
No. So this is we all okay. I apologize if I wasn't crystal clear about this.
It may be my fault. In any case, you've answered my question. No
Yeah,
problem.
right. Okay. For the larger community, I just want to say we already add the commit SHA. So we should essentially in our API result, we add a commit SHA to say, hey, you can go fetch by this commit and to get scorecard results by a commit SHA to figure out what it is. And what I'm suggesting is, along with this, also go fetch the latest release and add that as another option to say, hey, here's on the release of that repositories, what's the state it is. I do understand some of the checks aren't valid, like the branch protection stuff, but there are things that are still valid with that. That's my thought process.
Any comments? Any feedback, Panavi? Oh, sorry, Jeff, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I think the not doing this originally was just a limitation of, time and effort to be able to implement it. So I don't think, yeah, I think as this was, it's pretty clear that this would be better. It's just a question of can we do this?
Okay, that's a one positive answer. Okay, thanks, Jeff. Nobody else has any downsides to it. I would like to take and work on this. That's why I just opened this issue.
Yeah, this seems great.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Thanks, Azim. I will work on this.
Awesome. I mean, you resolved the only question I had, and that was a misunderstanding. So thank you.
Let's get back to so Ethan, do you want to take the next one? I think it's talking about the action policy proposal.
Yeah, thanks, Azim. And if you wouldn't mind clicking on that, that would be great.
All right.
Okay, so this proposal is for a new policy for All-Star. The goal is to allow organizations to curate or manage the actions that are available to the repositories within them. So here you see an example configuration for the policy proposal. In this example, you've got a group that matches all repos within the organization and then has rules specified. This one just requires specific actions to be present for all repos within the organization. Some other examples for groups that you could do are, you could do a deny list style or an allow list style, just as examples. Currently, GitHub only allows organizations to, I believe, set up allow list style policies, but those aren't really smart. They kind of just use glob matching, I believe, for the action. So this allows more specific version targeting. And well, yeah, that's the gist of the configuration. And then also included in the proposal are examples of what the output might look like. So if you wouldn't mind scrolling down a little, there's an example somewhere. Oh yeah, there you go. So this is an example of what the output might look like when, in the first example, an action hits a deny rule. So as you can see, it's not matched by any of the require or allow rules that came before. So it's denied. And then in the second example, and a requirement is not met. So some proposals are given for how to meet that requirement for the rule. So in this case, there are multiple actions that might satisfy the set of rules that match this repo here. So the ways to fix it include, you can add an action or fix one that's currently failing. So yeah, that's an example of the policy in action. And this is currently open to feedback, but yeah, it's just right here in the GitHub issue. Any feedback is appreciated.
I mean, do you want to go ahead?
This is cool. I really like it. I have one question on this. This is very similar to like any firewall policies. I could have different things, and most of the firewall policies, example on any cloud, gives you some kind of a number to say, hey, 1000, 1001, 1002. So ordering of which policy has to run would be a great addition to the say, because they order in which, because each one of them can step over each other. So that's one feedback on this to essentially do that. Azim, if you don't mind, can you scroll up a little back to the top of the policy?
Sure. While I do that, do you mind just repeating what your concern was? I just want to write it down in the note.
Not as a concern. I just wanted to say add. A suggestion is to add a sorting order so that we can pick up which policy has to run in what order, because that was my suggestion.
Okay. I'll at least make that more clear, because I think how it works in the proposal is the rules are run in order for each group. So yeah, just in the order specified in the YAML file.
Oh, in the order specified in the YAML file. Yeah. Now it makes sense. Okay. Or another suggestion is to have a number. So essentially, I don't have to. Okay, if I open a PR, then I need to know where it needs to go. That's a problem. Do you get as I go this, and that's why people have numbers to say, hey, this is the most critical thing that I want to run, and that's why people usually tag PRs to the bottom. But the future, I could have a critical policy that needs to be on top or something in between that becomes have a number. That's a reason to do that, and that's why firewall policies usually come up with a ordering number.
Huh. Okay, so, gotcha.
Yeah, so I like it. I like the direction. I think that there. So one with the proposal, we need to make it clear what the system is going to be doing by default. If it is default deny, for example, which if we're talking about firewalls, that's usually what happens. the priorities I agree with if we can figure out how to group priorities. Being able to specify that this is a critical priority versus, I'm trying to steer away from arbitrary numbering systems that you might see in these priority lists. So if you can say that, the policies of priority critical should be executed first, right? And then whatever falls through at the bottom, right? But I would need to look over the proposal in full to have more feelings and opinions.
Definitely. Thanks for the suggestions, you too. Currently, how the group system works is you can reorganize the groups. So as soon as any single set of rules or any single rule is failing, it'll create an issue for it on the repo, assuming the issue action is selected within the configuration. And you're able to rearrange the different groups. So if you wanted, you could make one higher priority, and that would show above in the issue, if that resolves that concern.
I would say that the I guess priority wise, it should be explicit as opposed to specified by ordering within the YAML configuration. That way you kind of get away from, well, I was adding some rules and I just wanted to make sure they were alphabetized or something like that, right? Where the priority, everything goes out of whack because someone had some understanding of the system that is not necessarily what the intent was, right? So being explicit with saying that this is a critical priority or this is ranked X, right, is going to give you a clear output.
Okay.
Ethan, do we have a guinea pig? I mean, volunteer.
Sorry.
Questions?
Yeah. Do we have an organization who is volunteered to give this thing a try?
I have a bunch of organizations that we could potentially use them on.
That'd be great because this looks promising. But I would love to get some feedback from somebody who's willing to give it a try.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
As long as there are opt-ins and backouts and all that good stuff, like I'm happy to help reason about it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
We're going to try to get the Angular folks to try this.
Okay. Cool-y.
One of the things.
Yeah, and there are. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
So, I want to know, are we having like regex match in some of these things? Because like I wouldn't want to, like, not that I'm not saying this is a must have, but I can be like all of scorecard repos, like example scorecard dash or star, which can essentially mean, because if think of an organization with 1,000 repositories, then coming up with all these things would be a little harder. That's my 2 cents on the having a regex would be helpful. And that could be an option to think about.
Right.
That's probably already supported. Is that correct, Ethan? I mean,
so currently there's at least glob matching for action names, so you could just allow broad set of actions. And by default, it's not in allow list mode. It's in, I guess, a deny list mode, you could say. So until how deny is applied is basically it'll go over each action and then run through all the rules with said action and check if the action should be denied, depending on whether it's specifically allowed by a rule before it hits a deny rule. But if it doesn't ever hit a deny rule, then it's allowed.
Cool. Last feedback. This, I know Scorecard people are also looking at a way to do this. It'd be great if we obviously, I see another, if we can do this together, it'd be great.
So,
Yeah,
so I would also say, like, now I'm thinking of another project. So in Kubernetes, we maintain something called Zeitgeist. The idea is that you drop a YAML file into a repo and you configure some pre-submit that basically says, if anyone would like to share this on their screen. I'll give you a link real quick. I'm wondering if we can integrate the two, because that is due for a little refactoring, or at least increased maintainership. I think there's an opportunity for us to work on a lot of these things in tandem. But the idea is basically to ensure that if you've got dependencies in a repo that are maybe specified by file, and not necessarily like checked by some system, that you can say, hey, this is supposed to be version blah. Don't, like, make sure that all of the references to version blah are updated to that version, right?
This is what Envoy also does. They have Envoy proxy has something similar. They also have, but this is something similar. Even they use that.
Huh. Very neat. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, that could make sense to do some kind of collaboration on this for sure.
Yeah. So we initially hacked on this for Kubernetes, and then someone forked the script and did some updates and like turned it into a more fully fledged tool, and then they donated it back to Kubernetes, and we're so I believe Kubernetes, some of my projects as well as Knative uses it for in a few places. So it'd be cool to it'd be cool to, like, we're all writing some of the same functionality, so maybe we definitely collab on it.
Yeah, sounds great. Also, I got a question from Laurent in chat, and the question was about pinning with hashes. There's, yeah, I just recently updated this to include support for that. So what'll happen is if you have a specific commit hash reference within your workflow for a specific action, what'll happen is All-Star will, at least with the current proposal, it'll go over to that repo that the action's in, and it'll look at the releases to find one that corresponds to that hash, and then use the tag from that release to do the version check with the version specified at the in the configuration.
Does that answer your question, Mark? I think I'll take that as yes. Anyone else who has questions? But overall, looks like pretty positive feedback.
I'll
Thank you,
link
everyone.
the actual. Yeah, I'm linking the actual Zeitgeist repo because what you just mentioned is baked in somewhere as well.
Awesome, thanks.
Ethan, I've added all of these to the notes, so maybe you should probably just summarize what we discussed here on the issue too. I think there's some pretty good points.
Thanks, Azim.
Go back. Cool. I think the next one is David, who's asking who should be fixing scorecard dependabot alerts.
Yep.
I don't have a good answer. I think whoever is picking it up should be fixing it. I think we just haven't paid attention to it.
Hello. I have opinions. So I think it's partially there's subtext, I think, David, which is that the the GitHub org owners receive Dependabot alerts for all, or have the option to receive Dependabots for all repos within the organization. So
we do, but that's not the real issue here.
yeah. So I think it's as you notice them. Hopefully, as you notice them, you're kind of tackling them, and that's what I try to do for the Scorecard repos. I did some patching on some of the Scorecard web app stuff over the last few days, but I think that it should be explicit, and it should. I think it's assumed. I assume it, but I think it should be made explicit that the maintainers of the repos should be patching those repos.
I mean, I think that's fair, but I'm actually asking a much more pointed question, which is among the maintainers, who's going to pick that up, please?
I can help out with that.
Sorry, I help out. I help out a lot with that. I spend my time in trying to look at. There are certain things that are not okay. I'm going to unpack that a little bit. Certain things which we haven't, because we have to upgrade to Go 1.18 or 1.19 because 1.17 is sunset, and we have some issues in solving that problem. If I fix that, other dependable warnings should go away. But if you usually see scorecard actions and scorecard, I've been taking care of that on that. But for some of the things that are still there, it's primarily because we haven't upgraded Go. But that's what needs to happen. I have a work in progress PR, but that PR had other problems. I should just pick that up and solve that, and then after that, solving on the scorecard dependable warnings should essentially go away.
The Go, some of the Go language updates like effectively block, or the lack of our updates effectively block all of the scorecard, all of the dependabot updates.
I don't think that's true for all of them. There's one recent. I don't want to point out details in this open call, but there's a recent one that I don't think is. It was just opened yesterday, so not having responded to it within 1 day is totally understandable. But
okay.
So tag us offline if you want to hit us on Slack.
I've actually just put the link in. Anybody who has write access to the repo, just click on the link. You'll see what I'm talking about.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, so I understand the other ones, but the one that was just pinged yesterday, it's a high one. I don't think it has I don't think the Go dependency is an issue in this case. So
Gotcha.
I mean, keep going on the Go stuff and updates, and good luck. I'm totally sympathetic, but that other one I don't think is caught up in that. I think.
Yeah.
I can be wrong.
Yeah, some of these things are indirect, so it looks like that's what it is. But I just want to unpack that to say some of these things. But we will look at that. Anytime like this, go ahead and on that particular issue or any of that, you can hit at the radar, and one of us should be able to pick it up.
So we had mentioned.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
We had mentioned the Go updates specifically. Part of the reason is the module resolution. So with indirect dependencies, there are a few that have done interesting things for their modules, which make the calculus unresolvable. So in newer versions of Go, that is less frictionful. I don't know words. But yeah, I can pick up the newest one. I'm looking at it now.
Okay.
It is update. It's effectively update to the latest thing. Yeah.
So Stephen or Naveen, are you going to look at the newest one that just came out yesterday?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Stephen will look at it. I'm not beating on you for just, oh my gosh, a report's done yesterday. Why aren't you done? But I want to give a heads up on that one.
I think the explanation too is important for the recording because it is easy to look at a repo and see updates flying by and them not getting resolved and being nervous about that, especially given what our project is, right?
Right. This one in particular, you're analyzing other people's projects, so there are good reasons to be concerned.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's all.
Thanks, Stephen, for taking that up. Naveen, the next one, is this about getting the PR in, or was there a bigger discussion?
We need to invite her because I just want to make sure that all of us, I don't see she's already part of the scorecard repo. I just want to make sure before I include her to the for having write access for markdowns, that this is open, we all agree to this, and then merge the PRN.
So I think I think that it's worthwhile to go back and revisit the discussion around the settings bot as well as code owners and kind of how they interact. I think there's one PR open for web app to update the code owners that is invalid because there's a manual process of actually adding the person to the repo as a collaborator or to a team. Really, we should be doing this on a team level, not individual level. So there should be a scorecard docs maintainers or whatever we want to call the team, and that should be the team that's granted access to that. So there, we can. I think the problem that you run into when you do teams is that for folks who can't introspect the teams, you don't know necessarily who to go to for support outside of them being automatically tagged on PRs. So I think in addition to the teams, we can list out in comments who are the members of those teams. But I think it's important to use teams for scalability.
I agree. I totally agree on that. So if that's the way we want to go about doing it, I'm more than like, should we create teams, and should we create like call walk run, create a docs team, add her to that, and then list those people who are those members? If that is the process, we can do that.
So it's multiple groups involved is the thing, right? So if she is not currently part of the org, then it's reach out to folks who have org.
She's
admin.
part of the org.
Okay,
She's part
cool.
of the org.
So that's out of the way. We already have teams. We have the scorecard team. We have scorecard admins and scorecard maintainers. We can create I can help out with this as well. We can create a new docs maintainers team. What needs to be handled is the decision around using settings bot.
That should be a separate discussion.
Jump in on the teams question first.
Yeah, I think Jeff had a question.
Settings bot. Does anybody on the scorecard maintainers have access to create teams? And also, what for people that aren't already part of the org, like what do we have to do to get them to be part of the org? Because using teams requires all of that.
So you would ping someone who is kind of like on the operations list for OpenSSF. So one of the program managers can help out with adding folks to the. This is opening up a separate discussion, which David, I will take offline with you because you wanted help with some of this stuff, and I have ideas. So
okay, awesome. Just a quick note. There's been some complications. One of our PMs, she's just going off on maternity leave. Another is returning from leave. So the correct people to contact right now for OpenSSF for any of those things are either Joy Burson or Khalil White. Happy to post email addresses for both. I mean, really just email both, and we will get that done. And if it doesn't get done quick, nag at us and complain at us, and we'll say sorry and we'll get it done.
Yeah, I think just fitting. Yeah. Oh,
other than getting people access and creating teams, they also have to be added to the org, which comes with permissions. Like I think you can actually create repos if you're an org member.
Right.
Are we worried? Like, are we okay with anybody that's like that should be a part of a team is also a part of the org? So
I think that is the separate discussion that I was highlighting with David. Okay. But
yes, I actually picked up the exciting and well, I would say probably thankless task of trying to gather a little group to figure out what the permissions should be for the GitHub org all the way across. I picked that up, and then I decided to get COVID instead. Really a bad decision on my part.
Terrible decision.
So I'll try to make better decisions in the future.
I'm sorry to hear that.
So I will. Yeah, well, I'm okay now. But just so that is a job in the job jar, but it got pushed out a little bit, and we are going to get to that. But the quick short answers for now: permissions. Talk to Khalil and Jory. Email them. They'll try to get it done, and then we're going to work out a longer term. Trying to make the policies much simpler. But for now, I think the key is just figure out what needs to happen.
And the simplest way for folks on the call, the simplest way to get in touch with those folks is to email operations@openssf.org. That includes all of the PMs and relevant members. So I had mentioned this to Brian on a separate call, and it's related to your email, David, but out of scope for this call. What OpenSSF needs is the equivalent of the Kubernetes contributor experience, the CNCF tag contributor strategy, and effectively that function of helping out with, like, so there's a separate sub project for GitHub administration that lives in Kubernetes and within, say, contributor experience, right? I can help y'all work out the details for that, because I think in addition to kind of some of the mechanical of like handling the GitHub stuff, there's also the contributor experience. How do I know where to go to get help? What's the map of what OpenSSF is, and how do I get plugged in? So that will be a thing that I think needs to start moving, and I'll help out on.
Can you send me just a quick email with a pointer? Because that's actually one of the questions is, CNCF has a huge amount of stuff, but I think the challenge is that it's, CNCF is just so much larger than almost everything else. And there's a question about whether or not it's excessively heavyweight for what we're trying to accomplish.
I wholeheartedly endorse it. And I think it's just a question of where should it live? And I think that's a question for this work group. If it's in this work group or if it's its own, then it's just a simple proposal to the TAC. And we've got a process for creating new working groups that involve, have a few meetings, try to pull some people together. So Stephen, I'd suggest getting started with that as soon as we can.
Yeah, sounds great. And I think,
awesome.
What I'll do is likely bring it to, because I think, David, where you found me was from the planning committee meetings via VM, right? So it might be something to kind of, noodle on for a bit, send it to the planning committee, and then bring it to the TAC for decisions.
Okay, awesome. Yes.
Cool. All right.
Okay.
I think a huge plus one towards. Sorry. No,
Sorry.
you want to go ahead?
We by then can we does anybody have any?
So the actual answer to the question from the beginning, right? I believe I have access to create teams.
Right. I agree. So we shouldn't have a blocker for anybody to, like, we don't have a blocker. That's all I want to do, so that we can move with this. I don't see anybody saying any no to it. So okay.
Yeah, I don't think there's a blocker because we have done it in the past. I think the longer tail exercise of auditing what the GitHub org settings are out of scope for this discussion. So I think it's fine. What I would want to resolve on the maintainer level is making the decision around setting spot. Because we can lay stuff down in code owners, but if they're not reconciling and people are making changes outside of that, then we're kind of fighting ourselves.
Okay. And on that note, Stephen, right now I think only you have the owner privileges on those teams. Could you add another person?
You are all maintainers. You're all maintainers for those teams. I did that as soon as you were part of the orgs.
Okay, perfect. Okay, yeah, okay, because we tried to update and we didn't have permission, so probably you've changed that. We couldn't do that. Okay, that's good. Thanks.
Yeah, before I move on, just wanted to give a huge plus one to what Stephen said. I think we've had similar discussions multiple times before about like contributor ladder, should we have the setting spot and things like that. So would be very helpful if OpenSSF has like an organization level instructions of how to do it. I think it saves us a lot of time. Cool. Moving on to the next one. I think Laurent and Ethan, you added this. I'm assuming this is the Gradle binary exception thing.
Yeah, that's right.
Or let me just share that page. But go ahead.
Sure. So I believe the question here is, should there be a process by which Scorecard creates exceptions to the binary artifacts policy based on potentially either the results of an external action being run on a repository or based on some kind of internal check? I think currently we are leaning towards having an external action and creating some kind of way for that external action to communicate with Scorecard, potentially so that other actions could do the same thing through check run annotations on GitHub. So this is an example of what that format might look like for communicating that some binary has been checked by a specific action or check on GitHub. Doesn't necessarily have to be an action, but yeah, that's the current idea for it that I was proposing. The reason for having an action requirement instead of just having Scorecard verify the files is that, well, one, verifying the files adds a lot of burden to Scorecard because then we need to decide which files are valid. And secondly, because verifying the files using Scorecard is only checking them at one point in time, while generally Scorecard is hoping to, of course, check that there are security practices in place for it. So probably having an action verification requirement would be good for that. And yeah, happy to hear other thoughts about it.
So one question I had, under which check would this go in? Because we want to be careful about not creating another check because we don't want it to be a kitchen sink. Do you have a specific thought process under which check will this go in?
Well, so Laurent was saying that we could create an action separately that would return these results through a GitHub check run annotation, and then Scorecard would receive those results. The idea would be that we would, because someone in this issue was talking about verifying some type of binaries that were provided by Microsoft, I think. They wanted to create an action for it, I think, or some kind of check for it. So the idea here would be that on Scorecard's end, we would interpret the results from that check using this format, but potentially other checks could return results in the same format so that those could be used to create exceptions to the binary artifacts rule as well.
So you're not proposing a new check, you're proposing a modification to the way the binary artifacts check works.
Yeah, that's right.
Perfect. I just want to make it explicit saying that's what we're planning to do. And Ethan, on the second note, you said the action are we proposing we create an action within the OSSF org to do this? Or what is your proposal?
Well, at the very least, it would be nice to have this system on Scorecard's end for confirming that binaries are valid, or at least receiving that result from an action. Whether we create an action, I guess we could create an action just to do that. I mean, that would help resolve this specific problem that someone was having who was using Scorecard for was having problems with their Microsoft signed binaries not being considered okay by the check.
So yeah, I don't think I fully understand the proposal here. So are we saying we plan to provide an action that will run on the client's repository, and then what happens when somebody runs Scorecard CLI on this repository?
Okay, yeah. So on Scorecard's end, the idea would be that it'll just look at the check runs for that repo and see if any have annotations that look like this format, where it says that those binary files are verified, so they can be exempted from the binary artifacts policy or check. And Laurent was talking about creating an action to help resolve someone's problem where they were not able to or they were verifying their Microsoft signed binaries. This is the action would be kind of a separate thing from the solution. So this is kind of a two-part solution to this person's problem.
So I think that, I think at least here I would call out that I'm looking at this verified true versus false. I would call out explicitly that the file in question was exempted as opposed to whether or not it's verified. Because you could be kind of mixing the concerns of whether something was actually checked by the system and dubbed verified, or it was exempted and we're flipping verified to true as a result.
Maybe. I mean, the idea here is that when this data here, I don't know if I'm communicating this well, but basically an action that could be provided by a third party is running and providing this result. So the intention here was to make it so that action could communicate to Scorecard which files it has verified. So for example, if someone creates an action to verify Microsoft signed binaries, for example, this action would create the annotation that looks like this, saying whether it's been able to verify each specific binary executable file. And then Scorecard can look at whether it's been verified and then make its own determination about whether to exempt it from the binary artifacts policy or check.
So, I mean, this is my very high level comment here, right? Like, I think I get the direction, but I feel like the implementation is super specific and super niche. Like, I think the general idea is, yeah, we should have Scorecard be more customizable so that, like, let's say a Microsoft repository can kind of customize it for their use case. But I think the solution is a bit too specific for like one exact use case, and like it's not very scalable. Like what Stephen said, if tomorrow someone comes up and says, I don't care about verification, I care about ignoring binaries in a folder or something of the sort, like, or any such case, I think it really doesn't scale very well. So I agree with the sentimentality of it, but I don't agree with the solution. I think we need to find a more generic way of doing this. Is like my
Okay.
kind
Do
of
you still like the idea of having actions or checks provide a result to Scorecard to help this policy out or this check out?
of the like a good thing about Scorecard is we basically say, give us a repository URL, go and run it, right? Like, and I mean, getting Scorecard adopted is itself a pretty it's a big hurdle. I think the more third-party integrations that we start expecting users to add, now we are basically saying, you want Scorecard to run better for you, install this action, right? Like, and it doesn't, in my opinion, I don't think it scales well in the long-term story. Yeah, that's my 2 cents here.
Fair enough.
Ethan, I have an opinion. I certainly concur with your thought process, wherein it shouldn't be Scorecard's responsibility to run these checks, because that means we are bringing these additional dependencies, rather depend on these external actions to say, hey, these actions ran, so that we trust these actions do the job instead of us doing the job. Which, for example, is the Gradle wrapper, which Gradle is there. This is being utilized in hundreds of thousands of repositories. How do we verify the Gradle? How are we going to verify the Gradle is not something malicious, or people put in anything binary into the repository? Very similar to that. So coming back to what you mentioned, I agree. Having an external action is the right approach instead of Scorecard doing all these checks by itself.
Awesome. Thanks, Naveen. Yeah, and for context, so there is currently an exception to the binary artifacts check, which says that if a repo has the Gradle wrapper validation action currently enabled and passing on the latest commit, then Scorecard will ignore the Gradle wrapper.jar files, which apparently are required for people using Gradle. So that helps resolve some false positives with Gradle wrapper. The idea here would be Yeah, I mean, maybe the interface could be changed, who knows? But the idea here is that fundamentally there should be some way for actions to communicate in a standardized way to Scorecard, that they have verified files, because, well, yeah, the idea would be just to reduce false positives. And downstream, this helps out All-Star, because we have a binary artifacts policy that sometimes that we would like to reduce the carve-outs for, because currently people have created exceptions, for example, for the Gradle wrapper.jar file, and that does reduce their security because they have no action checking it often enough. They just create an exception, so users could upload a false one currently with that exception. So the idea here is that we can at least have actions verifying them.
Anyone else has feedback for Ethan? So we have 3 minutes. I think I see the next item is maybe Jeff,
That's
do you
just
want
an
to? I think
FYI.
you're trying to. Yeah.
Yeah,
Just quickly go ahead.
so if you're using All-Star, I have a request for feedback, or just trying to connect to our users and figure out who they are. So there's an issue there for that. That's it.
So one quick thing, maybe David probably will know more about this. There's an end users group that's being created. I think there's a meet for it coming up. I think that's a group for figuring out how usable our tools are, if I understand correctly. So maybe that's one place we can start asking these questions.
Actually, probably more likely the people that respond will tell them to go there. So that might be a good thing to let them know.
Right. Cool. Final 2 minutes. I think this is Raghav, who's talking about adding a binary authorization feature in Scorecard. Raghav, do you want to quickly talk about that?
Yeah, this may not fit in the time here, but I just wanted to, I guess, introduce this this like idea for a feature. Today we have scorecard policies that can enable or disable whether a certain check runs, and also like can kind of check whether that check's score meets a certain threshold. And we have kind of hidden this, and there's a plan to do a more settings-based policy. But in this feature request, I just I'm kind of introducing a kind of alternate design for how policies can look, and it's more of a settings-based policy. And the idea is like, what policy just means, how do we go from the data that Scorecard outputs to answering a yes or no question that a user of Scorecard may have. So that's the feature. I would particularly like people's feedback on like kind of point 3 in that feature, which is if we were to do something that kind of looks at Scorecard data and then answers yes or no questions, where should that live? So that's what I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, please take a look at the issue. So before we continue discussion, I just wanted to close the facilitator question. Jeff says he can facilitate. Sorry, Naveen, please go ahead.
Sorry, I just wanted to say, if no one else was, okay, Jeff is picking it up. Perfect.
All right, cool, folks. Thanks a lot. We are right on the dot. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Take it easy, everyone.
See you.
Bye.
See you guys.
Thank you.